I'm delighted to be joined today by Andrew Penny and Tim Parkin, who are going to talk about doing business in North America. Andrew runs Kingsford Consulting and he's based in Ottawa. Hi, Andrew. And he's worked with hundreds of companies, helping them to expand across the continent. Tim is president of Parkin Consulting and he's based in Orlando. Hi, Tim. And he helps marketing teams become much more efficient and effective. So today they're going to really share their experience with you and give you their advice on how you can access the North American market, what you need to do. If anyone has any questions, comments, please pop them along in the chat box below. And we will be doing a Q&A once both Andrew and Tim have finished with their presentation. Appreciate that we're in a bit of a meeting room today and not so much a webinar. So if you would like to answer your question live, please, again, just let me know in the chat box and we'll do that for you. Again, if anyone has any technical issues, please do drop it in the chat box. I'm on my own today, so no support around me, but I will try and do my best to accommodate you. So without further ado, Andrew and Tim, over to you.
Well, I think if I've got that working properly, you can see a picture in tower in Toronto. Hello from Ottawa. And as an active member of the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce here in Ottawa, I really appreciate getting together with other chamber members around the world. I'm a big fan of the achievement because it helps connect people and businesses from different parts of the world. So it's a great way to connect in business. I've been told I have a mid-Atlantic accent, and that's primarily because I was born in Nottingham. But I left England with my family when I was about 9 years old. And we landed in Quebec City. We took a plane to Calgary, and a train through the mountains, the Rocky Mountains in Western Canada out to Vancouver. As a kid, I realized how massive this continent is. In England, you can drive from side to side very quickly, or even top to bottom in a day. Canada, it's a major excursion. And the same, obviously, in the United States. Now, I've been lucky over the last 20 years or so. I think I've visited just about every large city in North America, and I've done business in many of them. And I've been fortunate to have clients in manufacturing, distribution, software, SaaS companies, platform companies, associate technology providers, services companies, and so on. Multiple verticals and multiple kinds of businesses. And as I said, it's a very large, and for those of you, I mean, if you visit Las Vegas or go to Florida or Disneyland or something like that, you get. But when you start to drive and travel extensively in North America, it is massive. It's 80 times the geographic size of the UK. It's got 5.5 the population and 10 times the GDP. It is 80 times bigger, honest. Make sure I'm sharing. Yeah, the other interesting thing with North America is about 366 million people that all speak English, all in the same contiguous geography. There's a few obviously who speak French, some who speak Spanish, and a smattering of other languages, but you've got a 366 million person with one language, which is somewhat unique in the world. Logistics are fairly easy. There's 15 million trucks in North America moving 11 billion tons of product every year. By and large, the people are friendly. You might correct me on this, Tim, but Americans basically tell it like it is, and they drive hard there. But again, for Canadians, the same. But we're accused of saying sorry too often. We want to stay. Basically, the same attitudes. I think some people say that Canada is half American and half English in terms of its culture. And obviously, the whole continent operates on a 74 time schedule. Now, the people aren't evenly spread, obviously. The darker colors down here are the more dense populations. There are about 3,000 different counties in the US, 300 in Canada. And you can see that the population is very dense in the Northeast, and on the West Coast, primarily down in California. So it's not a even playing field. When you look at Europe and Great Britain, it to be fairly homogenous, but not so in North America. And as money is not evenly spread, household incomes vary dramatically depending on where you are in America. The dark green being the most wealthy households. You'll see some of that in the mining and Las Vegas and places like in California. So it's depending on what you're selling and what kind of market it's important to understand the geography, the population, and the income. The thing with North America, certainly the northern half, as you go sort of north of about this here, is that you'll get days like this. This is near me here in Canada. Beautiful day, but 6 months later, you're going to have this instead. So understanding that you can from one to the other within 1 year means you need twice the number of clothes, different snow airs, different approach. Travel is different at different times of the year. So understanding seasonality that a lot of people coming to a new market don't necessarily appreciate. Now, you wouldn't be alone coming to North America. The UK exports about 67 billion pounds. After Brexit, it implemented the trade continuity agreement, which replicates most of what the European trade agreement had. So it's fairly good there. The US and UK free trade agreement is probable towards the end of next year. It is likely to come. And the other thing I think that is quite interesting, Americans and Canadians, by and large, are Anglophiles. People from Britain are cool. They're different. They're interesting, and hey, they speak English in a funny way. So there's a real empathy and a willingness to communicate, engage with people. So shifting forward a little bit, what's been happening over the last year. There's a term I use, unglued, and the way of doing business over the last 12 to 18 months has completely changed. Supply chains are fragmented, organizing themselves. Distribution agreements are in flux at the moment. People don't care so much where you're located. We're doing business here this morning. I think I'm about 3,000 miles away, but really I'm 24 inches away, so it doesn't really matter. The other thing that's happened during this ungluing is that consumers have put aside about $1.8 trillion savings accounts, and they're looking for something to do with it, whether it's buying a new house, whether it's travel, whether it's investing in infrastructure. There is a huge amount of money ready to be invested by North Americans. The other thing that's happening, demand, is there are product shortages. So people are scrambling for mining equipment, for sugar, for just about every product and quantity you can think of. So that demand is also causing people to rethink their existing relationships. Another thing that's happened over the last year and a half, this ungluing has kind of accelerated, is the changes in technology. We now have gig work, we have direct to consumer, we have Internet of Things, we have sensors and devices, about everything you can think of. That's being accelerated by artificial intelligence. People are changing how they deliver value. They're selling just about anything now as a service, from a engine to a car ride. That's being further accelerated by high speed like 5G. We're looking for one client right now at using virtual reality or augmented reality to help with a remote repair service for heavy equipment. Social media networks are changing the way we commute instantly around the world. And I couldn't help but put YOLO in there, because you do only live once, and people are ready to change and do things quickly. So the amount of money we have, the ungluing of the existing relationships, The acceleration of technology adoption has dramatically changed the playing field, and in my opinion, creating huge opportunity in North America. Let's say you decide you want to go to North America. The first thing to do really is to conduct an honest appraisal. Do you have what it takes? Do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have some particular service that you think, you believe is best in the world? Something that can penetrate a new market. But when you do come to a new market, please with a blank sheet. Don't try to repeat what you've done in the UK or in Europe. A completely blank sheet. And when you do, don't compete on price and services, compete strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? You're new in North America, you've got no baggage. You don't have a distribution network, you don't have a channel, you don't have a brand, you don't have a pricing structure, you don't have a promotion or market advertising structure. You can be anything you want. For those who've watched A Knight's Tale, one of the themes in there is you can change your stars. So when you come to North America, you can leap ahead. The incumbent suppliers are going to be encumbered with their channels and their structures and their programs and their brand identity, all that stuff. They're locked into a way of doing business that's probably 10 years out of date. A new player coming and reset the game, whether that's a B2B game, a B2C game, a direct-to-consumer Tesla. Rethinking how you play the game will give you a huge edge in North America. Coming in with that attitude, okay, where do you play? So we have to segment the market. We have to look at geography, the characteristics. We have to look at the channels, the distribution, the logistics. We're with one client right now. We've narrowed it down to farmers under the age of, and there are many of them, but they are more willing to use technology in their purchasing process than older farmers, but that's a way of segmenting a market. We need to look at how to win. Again, strategy, not features. Reinvent the game, make your own rules, take an when you go into the marketplace. One of the most dramatic ways these days, if you're selling through partners in other parts of the world, is to consider to consumers. That is being done, Tesla is the biggest example, but Washington, just about everybody else is looking at a D2C model. That could be something that you should consider. Once you've figured out where to play and how to win, then you have to design the engagement process. And my friend Tim is going to go into more detail on this, but you engage with your market. Where do you start? In fact, some look at Canada as a starting point, where they can use it as a test market before expanding to the US. Other market entrants need a much bigger market with a different segment, start on a continent-wide basis to get going. Design your engagement process. Think of it backwards from the traditional way. We've certainly accelerated now to the point where it's impossible to sell. I'll repeat that. You cannot sell anymore. All we can do is help people to buy. By taking that approach, you will again differentiate yourself from the hard push salespeople. So buy needs to be part of your engagement process. If you've got that done, then it's a matter of saying, well, okay, is it going to work? And you should always put together a cash flow statement. From the starting point, you have to spend and how much profit are you making until you hit break even, return on your investment. And the question is, how big a risk do you want to take before you start to turn positive? So always put that cash flow analysis. That's essentially how I would recommend coming into the market. If you did want to get more information on it, this is our team. We work with companies all over the world, helping them to expand into North America. And whether you work with us or not, I think if you take some of these ideas to heart, you should do, as we say, dominate any market. Now, I'm pleased to have my friend Tim in Orlando. He is one of the brightest insightful marketing experts that I know, which is why I invited him to join me this morning to share with you. And he advises some of the fastest growing companies in the country. So I'd like to turn it over to you if you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the introduction. We'll only have a few minutes here, so I want to give you guys the quick background, as Andrew just highlighted, and then really practical things you should think about and consider doing if you want to break into the North American market. As Andrew mentioned, I'm in Disney. I'm in Orlando, so the happiest place on earth. And the point I want to make here is that North America can be your happiest place on earth if you come to North America. As Andrew just mentioned, the market, we have trillions of dollars that people are spending. There's the logistics, there's the infrastructure, and more importantly, there's the appetite. As he mentioned, many people in North America are files. And COVID, Andrew was talking about the reset. COVID has reset business in North America. A lot of businesses have been disrupted. They've gone out of business. There's been innovation. So this is the prime time, the prime opportunity to consider this and take it seriously, because now is a really great timing window. And the end of this year, as we go into next year, is going to be a really just amazing of growth and opportunity if you take it seriously. So the next slide here I want to talk about is America, as I mentioned, is just such a land of opportunity, and we're consumers of advertising and of marketing. Now that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because people want you. If you're a new entrant in the market, if you have a new presence, they want to see you, they want to consume that. The bad thing is there's a ton of noise. And so we're going to talk here in the next couple of minutes about how to stand out. There is so much noise, because if you go to Times Square or something like that, as you saw from Andrew's graph, there's a lot of people there, of course, but it means there's more competition, there's more noise. And so we need to find a way to market and stand out from that noise without spending exorbitant amounts of money. Slide here. Another thing to consider is the number of businesses. So again, in the UK, there's about 6 private businesses. In the US, 32 million. Again, just underscoring the scale that we're at. There's so much opportunity for you to be one of those businesses, but more importantly, to with those businesses, or to build alliances and connections and partnerships with those existing. Excuse me. Next slide. Thank you, Andrew. Also, the EU and other countries have much more stricter privacy rules in marketing. So when you talk about entering a new market, there's often concerns of, what can I say? How can I message people? Can we email people? Lots of different, rules around advertising and messaging. In America, it's the Wild West. We have almost no real laws in place for this, and the ones who aren't really enforced. So there is, again, just massive opportunity here. If you take this to heart and some confidence and push forward, the land is here for the taking. And the fear of the noise and the competition, again, there is just massive gold here by coming to North America, and particularly the States. We just constantly see innovation and growth, et cetera. Next slide, please. And as Andrew mentioned, this is my puppy slide. One of these. These are the Americans and the Canadians even. Seeing the UK business. Again, we really are Anglophiles. It's true. I know many of my friends and colleagues are Anglophiles, and the UK. Personally, I've been fortunate to visit the UK several times, and love it. Love the people there. Love the culture and everything about it. So again, people want you to come here, and there's a massive opportunity if you come here. So I'd encourage you to take this seriously. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the major challenges first. I'll go through this quickly. You already know some of them. And then I want to talk about the 2 things you should focus on to have a chance of success. So the major challenges, if we go to the next slide, are what I call the 4 L's. And you have to know these so that you don't burn all your money and waste all of your time in doing this. I apologize. We'll have the 4 bullet points here. First, as I mentioned, is lots of noise and competition. Again, America is the land of advertising. So there's a ton of noise. There's a ton of competition. You saw 2 million businesses. It's tough to compete, but don't let that dissuade you, because there is opportunity. The second is, if you're a new entrant, you're going to have little or no awareness. And that's a huge hurdle to overcome, given that there's lots of noise and competition. The third, of course, is the lack of a foundation, or, being the new guy on the block, new woman on the block. There's a challenge here that no one's heard of. You don't have those friendships, you don't have those partnerships, you don't have those alliances. And so we need to form those. You need to find, because you can't do this alone. It's extremely difficult. And that's why Andrew mentioned his company specializes in this. Someone who's been there, who's done that, who can help you. And the fourth, of course, is a limited budget. And when it comes to marketing, what marketing teams and organizations are most notorious for is wasting and spending money on marketing things that don't work. There's lots of things you can do, but there's very few things that you. So let's talk about what those are. So there's two keys to success here I would recommend you focus on if coming to North America, and they may not be what you'd expect. First here is press, and consumers' minds are not made up by advertising. Advertising is effective, certainly, but you first have to have a place of credibility found to build upon. And that means you have to establish yourself as a presence, as an authority in the market. And you do that through press. And so if we go to the next slide here, you can just see that there are papers printed every day, there's social media, there's blogs, there's podcasts, there's all sorts of, and Americans typically consume this, in a much higher degree than anybody else on the planet. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on all sorts of things, consuming news and looking for sources. So you can go ahead and get interviewed by the press, get a PR agent, hire a PR agency, build that credibility and start to build that awareness around your company, your products, and your services. In addition, there are other ways to get press. If you look at the next slide here, and that's podcasts. And so if you have there are many podcasts that you can get interviewed on. They would be happy to have you as a guest. Again, especially if you're from a country, particularly the UK, to talk about your business, to talk about why you're coming to North America, your products, your services, your differentiators, your value proposition. And this is free publicity, free exposure to help lay that foundation for you as you come to North America. The second thing I want to talk about is partnerships. And we mentioned the lack of a foundation and support structure. You have to have this. You guide you through this, and you need people to help you have feet on the street, so to speak. And so partnerships identify people who are vendors or shoulder niches, or even who's here. They may have a gap that you can help them complement. And if you can find a winners, then you can access their audiences. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see this. This is what I call audiences or other people's networks. And so now you're using those partnerships to get this awareness, and you're having that authority, that credibility bestowed upon you because these people trust the partner. So partnerships are one of the most effective ways to enter a new market. It's cheap and it's effective. So finally here, next slide, please. And learn. Again, the biggest mistake that marketers make is they take a bunch of money, they say, we're going to do X, do it. And they don't look at the results until it's done. Don't do that. You'll save a lot of time, a lot of money. Make, test, and learn. Take small bites, approach things piece by piece, and test things. And one of the ways that is with customer interviews here. You can find some potential customers or potential people, and talk to them and ask them questions. Now, this doesn't sound very helpful, but it's amazingly helpful. Even with a handful of 5 or 10 customers, you ask them some really key questions, and you get the insights about what are the challenges they have with current suppliers, or what are the things they wish existed in the market. Andrew was talking about disruption, innovation. So for example, if you talk to customers, you can get some great ideas and insight about what they really want and need, and this will help you stand out in the market tremendously. Next slide, please. A final point here is America is the land of opportunity. It truly is. North America, and particularly the States, as I mentioned, there's the GDP, the spend here is massive. It's immense. So please take this seriously and consider it. We would have you come to North America and have your business present here. Again, you need the ships, you need the press, and you need someone to guide you through this. But the road is yours, and encourage you to hit the pedal to the metal, full speed ahead, because the opportunity is here and your business will, without a doubt.
So we promised you as a result of this session this morning was a 100-day road to how to execute on some of the ideas that we've talked about. Maybe Tim, would you like to explain your roadmap?
Absolutely, please. I'd love to run through it. So basically just talked about was 2 things, press and partnerships, and you'll see that mapped out here. So 100 days is, so Andrew and I have mapped this out. This is the marketing plan. So first, you have to immerse yourself in the marketplace. That means before you even think about coming to North America, go and find your competition, join newsletters, watch their advertising, see what they're putting out there, and get a sense for what's going on. That will help you to map landscape in terms of who are the competitors, what messages are they putting out there, how can you differentiate yourself and out. And then, as I mentioned, conduct those customer interviews. It doesn't have to be with many people, but you need to talk to, if you do not talk to customers, you have a much higher chance of failure here. So the customer interviews will help you understand and validate your approach. And then 6 and 7 here is the competitive assessment. And this, a deeper dive into that with number 7. Who are your buyers? Andrew was talking about the segmentation, a real key part of this. You can't, be everything to everyone. You need to decide geographically, graphically, who are you going after? Who will give you the most chance of success? And then, as I talked about with the press, PR agent, if you're, a startup or a small company, or if you're a larger company, an agency can help you with this. But PR agent or PR support is essential. So you can define your value proposition and craft it into a message and into the marketplace to get people acclimated with who you are. And then again, start to find those, identify those partners. This is a lifelong effort. You don't build partners overnight. And you want to consider access, reach, and potential. What I mean by that is, do you have the ability to access the partners? How much reach do they have? How big is their audience? And what potential is there for their audience to do business? Use those 3 criteria to evaluate partnerships before you pursue them, and map out a win for the partner. And this needs to be a win-win for them and for you in order for it to be fruitful and successful, and start outreach. And then finally, here at the tail end of the 100 days is develop the assets you need. Some of that will be PR, some of that may be sales sheets, some of it may be things for the partnership to make them effective, workshops, trainings, etc. And evaluate what you're doing and scale. Remember, test and learn is key. You can't just commit to something. You have to continually be evaluating it, changing it, and optimizing it as you go.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that, Tim. Something to remember, both of us have put these 100-day roadmaps together, but it will obviously depend on where your journey and where you want to go. And each plan will be unique for each organization. So I think it's best, if you would agree, Tim, to look at these as sort of a generic approach, and on each situation, each company should tailor it to suit their own needs. This is actually right off our Look West program, and this information site as well. We will be distributing this PowerPoint later to who attended the session this morning, so you don't have to write everything down. You will get a copy. Obviously, the first part to look at is some sort of an assessment. Do you have what it takes to export? Do you have the resources? Do you have the staffing? Do you have the ability? With some countries, do they speak English? Because if you cannot operate in English, you cannot operate in North America. We help them determine what their lead product or service is. What is that one thing? You don't have to go out with the full product line. You can choose 1 or 2 pieces that are going to be perfect sharp point to enter the market. And it may not be your biggest seller. It could be something that's strictly sold to open up the market for you. You need to do a market scan. How big is the addressable market? How big could you make it? How well organized is it? Controlled by one company? Is it highly fragmented? Is it distributed geographically, or is it located in one place? So doing a 30,000-foot flyover is very important, and whether the market makes sense. If you've got a product and you think you're ready and the market is big enough, well, then go a little deeper. So you pass that next gate, and let's have a deeper dive on not only the competition in terms of other companies, but what are the competing solutions people address their need, their desire, their problem now. That's who you're competing with. And then a deep dive into the market. Who actually makes the buying decisions? What is the buying behavior? How tightly can we segment this market? Which segment should we focus on? What of them should we focus on? By understanding the competition and the market, then what I would call a position statement. Essentially, what do you do? Who do you do it? Who else does it? And why are you going to be the better solution than them? And if you can't those 4 questions, go back and start over. Okay. What do you do? Who do you do it for? Who else does it? And why are you better? Once you understand that, then we can look at what are the channels to get to the market. Do you want to sell direct, to sell online? Do you want to have an indirect channel? Do you want VARs? Do you want dealers? Do you want partnerships? Do you want integrated sales solutions? There's an infinite number of ways to get to your target. Once you have that, then as Tim has been talking about, what is your awareness plan, that inbound activity? How do you help people buy what it is you have? And that can be not only your marketing, it can be your salespeople, your customer support entities, but how do you get out to the market? Then obviously the cash flow analysis, which is where you do your risk and reward trade. If you invest very deeply, you probably have a higher return, but of course you've got a lot of sunk fund risk. If you invest very lightly, well, not a lot of risk, but then the probability is also lower. Once you've got your cash flow forecast done, then it's the time we go or don't we go. And if you're going, you need an implementation plan. Who does? And then you get your initial market engagements. And as we say in Canadian hockey, it's game on, because now you're in the marketplace. So that's an approach that works in most situations, but could of course be tailored anywhere that's necessary. So that's basically what Tim and I have for you this morning. We've got about 10 minutes or so, and we'd be very pleased to answer any questions. But thank you much for having us meet with you today. Tim has an excellent newsletter called Insights, which I would encourage you to subscribe to. Email is here on. We have a newsletter called Tuesday Tune-Up available on our website, which is, I think, very useful. It talks about business strategy and growth for companies who really want to expand themselves. And of course, we're both on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you and have you as part of our community. So, Steph, I'd like to thank you for this. And let me turn it, I'll stop sharing the screen and turn it back to you. You can look at some of the questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew and Tim. Really great insight into entering the North American market. So I guess, yeah, does anyone have any questions at the moment? If you want to pop anything in the chat or just kind of jump in over us. If not, and you have some questions for Andrew or Tim kind of later on, you can just kind of email us and we'll put you in contact with both Andrew and Tim. I think just from my part, just kind of going back onto the roadmap, and you're saying that it's, it has to be quite bespoke and kind of where you want to start selling into North America, and us being part, or the transatlantic chapter being part of the BABC network, which is the American Business Council. Obviously different states work differently, and it might be easier with some markets than others. From your experience, what state is easier to kind of start with? Because I know obviously everyone's so different, the way they work, we've all got the same objective, but yeah, what would you say, or maybe the most challenging, or?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times when organizations, particularly government organizations, helping companies come into a country, their emphasis is inbound investment. So what they want to do is they want to create jobs in North America. So if you want to set up a factory or a distribution center or a massive sales office, they're happy. They'll give you grants and money, and they will steer you to a place that's regulatorily free, whether it's a manufacturer, whatever. What though is most companies don't necessarily want to put a plant in North America unless they're selling here. So if you're not present in North America, just start by selling here. And do that, your regulatory burden, your ability to sell in different states or product, it really doesn't matter. You can operate anywhere, and it's more about the business opportunity. We did a project for a plumbing manufacturer, and it turned out that it was a very high-end product. So we were looking for very wealthy people in dense concentrations. And we found pockets in New Jersey, in Washington, in New York, obviously, in parts of LA, market, and we just shipped wherever they were. So to think entering a particular state or province is really irrelevant. It's more about business opportunity, and that's not defined or constrained by geography in any way.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Would you have anything to add on that, Tim?
No, I think you're right, Andrew. I think you're spot on there. And I would add that, a lot of people, when you come to think about New York, LA, the sort of hot spots that we've all heard about. But depending on your demographic, on your market, there's a lot of opportunity. I'm here and, there's a huge older demographic. There's a lot of money down here. People don't realize that. There's a lot of tourism, of course. COVID put a damper on that. But there are areas like that are older areas that you may not think about at first that have massive spend, massive populations of particular demographics. If you're looking for a very specific demographic, like the Midwest, as Andrew, is not as populated. So depending on who you're targeting, it can be difficult. But just think about those secondary places. There's less competition. There's still tremendous, spend and investment.
And people in the small areas, which, we tend to look at the massive, okay, well, there's 360 something million people. You don't have to go after all of it. You can 10 million and get 1 million. Well, that's not bad.
Brilliant. That's great. I've been told my connection isn't very stable, so I apologize if I've been dropping in and out. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions, you want to raise your hand or drop in. No,
but
okay.
We do appreciate the time we've had together today. We'll be sending out that PowerPoint later, so our email contact, our websites are on there, and I'm sure Tim would agree with me. If anybody has any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to ask. I mean, we made a full business plan for you based on a question, but if you want to know, who's the best, where, which market do you think is right for this, or what's the most cost-effective way to such and such, don't hesitate to ask those hard questions. We love those, and we'd appreciate getting them.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you all. And good luck.
Andrew,
right.
we have just had one question come in, and it's: do you recommend using PEOs to employ staff, people employer organizations?
It really depends on what to do. If you have to have employees in North America, yes, a PEO can be very helpful, because now you're getting into human resource legislation, and that can be a useful way to do it. But I know many companies that don't do it that way. These smaller companies with a limited number of people, contract employees is a very effective. And in fact, most small companies do operate on a contract employee basis. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you need dedicated long-term employees, maybe a PEO is for you actually have your own employees. But yes, I've seen it work both ways. It really depends on the situation. So if whoever has the question would like to chat more about it, I'm willing to help.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you again for your time. And you, Tim, as well. It's been really great kind of just getting to know you and welcome you into the chamber, and thanks for a fantastic session, and we look forward to working with you again. And thank you to all watching, and we'll see you hopefully with other events in the week. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
All right.